Welcome, everyone, to another session of the Colorado Plateau Dark Sky Cooperative's Quarterly Connections. Today, our topic will be on cultural connections with night sky, for which we'll be discussing how personal experiences and culture can shape our relationship, our values, and perspectives towards dark night skies. We have two very special presenters today who will be sharing their stories and connections with the night, embodied through their Indigenous heritage, their work, and their experiences. Starting with Ben Rupert, he is a cultural specialist and the destination development lead for Nevada's Indian Territory. Ben is of Duck Valley Shoshone Paiute and Shoshone descent, and he has some exciting developments with the Duck Valley Shoshone Paiute tribe that he'll be sharing today. He's joining us from Carson City, Nevada. Second is Ravis Henry. He is a park ranger at Canyon de Chelly National Monument in northeastern Arizona. Ravis is a historian, a storyteller, a traditional knowledge holder, a silversmith, and a fingered spiritual being. He is Dene and is of the Towering House clan and born of the Coyote Pass Jimenez clan. You can see their bios on our website, and I will have them each introduce themselves in just a moment. I wanted to first reiterate the goal of our educational series here. It is to build a community, to foster connections and broaden a collective understanding of matters related to the dark night sky and its management. We hope with this forum we can all learn, support one another, and ultimately be more effective in our unique roles and mission. I'd like to thank my colleagues with the Cooperative, the Institute of Outdoor Recreation and Tourism at Utah State for your support in the series and today's presentation. And my name is Lisa Stoner. I am the coordinator for the Colorado Plateau and the Basin and Range Dark Sky Cooperatives. I also want to acknowledge my co-host today, Gina Pearson, who is one of our original planners for this series. She has been working with the National Park Service for several years, recently moved to Taos, New Mexico, where she is tuning in today. She works for the Taos BLM office. It is with great thanks to Gina, who actually introduced me to Ravis and Ben. She has kindly offered to help me with moderating and helping with the Q&A today. A couple of logistics before we get started. For our audience, we are recording today. All these sessions will be put on our website, and you're welcome to view past recordings. If we're going through our presenters today, if you have questions, please put them in the chat, and we will address those after each speaker with a larger period of Q&A at the end. I want to say thank you to everyone, especially to our speakers today. I'm going to pass it off to Gina, who will do the honors to present our speakers today. Thank you, Gina.
Thanks, Lisa. It's good to be here. I'm honored to co-host today. And before I introduce Ben, I just wanted to say a couple things. We all know that light pollution impacts our ability to, view the night sky, constellations, and of course impacts wildlife behavior and bird migrations. But light pollution also impacts indigenous knowledge in the sense that its relationship to cultural and spiritual connections that tribes all over the world have with the night sky. And a scientist from Australia said this: the sky can be compared to a library in which each star represents a book. If we start to cover up and lose sight of those books, we lose our reference points. We lose that link and our information. So without further ado, I want to introduce Ben, and yeah, take it away, Ben.
Okay, well, I just want to thank everybody for inviting me here. This has just been truly an honor to be able to speak on such a valuable tool that is becoming very, very important for not only for our storytelling, but and revitalization of our culture and just basically cultural awareness. I started out, I just recently retired from the City of Reno Fire Department. I was a fireman for 34 years. I'm also a veteran. And when I retired, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And that's how I ended up going back to school at Oregon State University to get my master's degree. And that's kind of why I'm all ASU'd up right now, is because we're going on to the Big 12 championship here this week and then off to the college playoffs. So I'm all forks up proud right now. And so I wanted to spend a little bit of time. Gina, I see that I don't see the presentation there. If you can pull up the presentation. So just basically wanted to, I can do a little bit of introductory of who Nevada's Indian Territory is. We are a volunteer nonprofit organization. We help to represent and do destination planning for all of our 28 tribes in the state of Nevada. So this is Nevada's Indian Territory, and that's actually a photo of myself doing a night shot. And it was kind of a dream that I had to do as an eagle dancer, to do a shot underneath the stars like this. And so that's where we went out into the Great Basin and took this photography right here, and you see the amazing Milky Way in the background. And so we wanted to come up with a very, very strong, bold statement of who we are with Nevada's Indian Territory. As I mentioned, we help do destination planning for 28 tribes in the state of Nevada. So we came up with changing the world through ecocultural tourism of the Great Basin. And when you ask what is ecocultural tourism, we kind of wanted to have a unique niche tourism. And what we're looking at is combining, we all know what the ecotourism is and how important that is, especially now as we are looking at different ways to have both meaningful and authentic experiences. It's getting people out in the outdoors. And so ecocultural tourism, our ecotourism, is becoming very, very popular. Along with that, you have our cultural tourism, and that's been around for a long time. And so we decided to mix the two together. So that's when you get the ecocultural tourism. And the Great Basin, if you're not familiar with the Great Basin, I truly believe we have the best dark skies out there. That might be in question with some of the other surrounding states, but I would say that your Great Basin provides the best area for the night skies. And so if you take the state of Nevada, we're pretty much right in the middle of the Great Basin. And if you did it geographically, the water does not drain out into the ocean. So it doesn't go into any rivers that trickle out to the ocean or flow out to the ocean. So that's the big distinction of what makes the Great Basin. Next slide. So we wanted to also tie in our mission statement along with our bold vision that we had. And if you look at our mission statement right here, really what it's coming down to is we wanted to move our organization that represents the tourism and also cultural awareness and inclusion of all of our Great Basin tribes, which I had mentioned before, the 28 tribes. So we wanted to take it into not only the ecocultural tourism that I was talking about in our destination planning and marketing, but we also wanted to put it in a regenerative type tourism. And what I mean by that is we wanted you, when you travel into the Great Basin and see our different tribes and see the different ecocultural tourism opportunities that we have out there, from museums to fishing, world-class fishing, to hunting, to hiking, to kayaking. There is just, just a vast amount of different opportunities that you have in the state of Nevada and in the Great Basin. We want you to not only experience that, but we also want to provide an avenue where you make it in a regenerative approach. And what I mean by that is that when you visit the Great Basin and see our 28 tribes, that when you walk away, you are strengthening your cultural awareness, you're being inclusive of all of our tribes out there, you're respecting our culture, and most important, you're respecting Mother Earth. And so when you travel into in this regenerative approach, you're walking away and making it a better place. And it might be just as simple as learning some of the language, some of the name placing out there, or it might be helping out with trash. It might be helping out with our philanthropy projects out there. So that's what I mean by regenerative tourism. Next slide. This is a good map to represent our 28 tribes. We just recently added in a 28th tribe, which is the Fort Mojave, which you see is kind of that purple shade that's very down at the very bottom of Nevada. And that is actually a little bit out of the Great Basin there because, as I mentioned before, the water doesn't flow out to the ocean. But that area right there is right on the, they call themselves the River People, and they're right on the shorelines of the Colorado River. And so we start on the bottom right there. As you move on up, then you hit the Southern Paiute tribes, and that's that darker brown shade that you see in there. And then we have our Las Vegas Southern Paiute tribe. We also have Moapa tribe. And then just over the borders, and we never had borders back then, you get into your to other Southern Paiute tribes, such as the Kaibab that are in that area. Going on up, you see the green swath that's in there. That represents a lot of different tribes that we have in the Great Basin. And this is our New Wave people, or our Western Shoshone. And so we try to put in the how we say the proper name of each one of our tribal general areas, along with the common word that's used out there. So then that actually goes all the way, you could see where it stops right there at the border, but it goes all the way down into Timbisha, which is, everybody knows it as Death Valley. And then it travels all the way up into Utah, and it goes all the way into Idaho, and goes all the way up into that Fort Hall area. So those are all the New Wave tribes of the Western Shoshone. And you continue on over, you get a lighter tan color right there. That is the Northern Paiute. And then the last one is the Lake Tahoe area, which also includes Reno, Carson City, goes up into the Sierra Mountains. That is our Washoe or our Washoe territory right there. And this is just a general representation because we are very nomadic and moving around the entire Great Basin with all the tribes moving around it. Okay, next slide. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time and just talk about what are some of the things that we do with Nevada's Indian Territory. We live and die by the grant. So we are 100% funded through Travel Nevada's grant. We are on the verge of becoming a 501c3, which will open up the other grant opportunities for us, but we live and die by the grant. We travel around to do various trade shows. Not only do we do trade shows here domestically, we go internationally and do trade shows to get people to come into the state of Nevada and to visit and be able to visit our 28 tribes. We have a beautiful website, and I believe that Gina has, Lisa has included that in the talk right here as Nevada's with an S on there, indianterritory.com. When you go on there, the homepage that you see, you'll see a downloadable brochure, and the picture that you see on the left, that's actually a representation of, you'll be able to tell that you're on the right track for our downloadable brochure because that's what it'll look like right there. We use that graphic there for our downloadable brochure. And then we have itineraries, and we have itineraries that represent all the 28 tribes. And what we try to do is instead of breaking down each one of the tribes, even though all of our tribes are very unique in their certain way, we did group into 5 different categories of the Washoe, the Northern Paiute, the Western Shoshone, the Fort Mojave, and the Southern Paiute. We just recently completed a strategic development plan, which really focuses on that regenerative type tourism. One of the things that we're super excited to announce here that we're going to be having in the next month is a navigation app. So if you're traveling down to Las Vegas, or you're going to Reno, Lake Tahoe, you're going over to Elko, you're coming over from Utah, and you want to have an authentic cultural experience, you'll be able to utilize our navigation app and create your own type of itinerary that goes through and represents our tribes in the state of Nevada. We do powwow marketing grants where we help out all of our different cultural opportunities to be able to, our events is what I meant to say, and we help to sponsor them for their marketing of their cultural events. We also have a calendar that's on our website. We help out with interpretive signage. So we have out the entire, it might be working with the Nevada Department of Fish and Wildlife, or it might be working with the Department of Transportation. We help out with the different sign interpretations. We also are tied into the Great Basin Artists. What I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of go past, I'll come back to this Duck Valley project right here, because this is the most important part of it. But we have marketing video, and one of the things that we just came out with is the use of an influencer too. And they did absolutely beautiful write-up of really a very comprehensive write-up of who Nevada's Indian Territory. So that's also included in the this presentation here that you'll see in the notes. And then we also working with the California Trail Project. If you go to the next slide. This is a good example of what we do when we work with. So the Washoe tribe is a standalone tribe of those 5 major groups I was telling you about. And so we try to instill language in there. So to our people, Daho'aga means the Lake Tahoe shoreline. It's mispronounced word as Tahoe, but Daho is the correct way to say it. So we try to utilize the correct spelling. We go in consultation with the tribe to make sure that all of our culture sites are, the language that we're using is all correct. And you'll see then there, we put down where the homelands are. We have the Daho Pledge, which is all based upon that regenerative and ecocultural tourism opportunities I was telling you about. We have signature events and interests that you may want to consider in the area. And then we have our cultural opportunities. We just completed a video, so you can get the video on our website. You can get it from going through the article that we just posted in here, or you can utilize these cultural sheets that we have here and scan that QR code, and it takes you to a video on responsible tourism around the shorelines of Lake Tahoe, because that is definitely something that we have to always constantly be worried about, is how people treat our shorelines of Lake Tahoe, or Daho'aga. And then down the bottom there, you see another QR code, and that QR takes you into different itineraries. The next slide, please. The next slide shows you just how we work also to help out with interpretive signs. And so this is an example of one that they wanted to put along the Carson City River. We instill the language of different animals and the names of the river. We talk about a lot of the different things that you saw in the previous one, but we also add in, we have one of our former chiefs, our tribal chairman, excuse me, spoke about how when the land suffers, so do the people, and it's basically just saying respect your land out there. If we can go back 2 slides now, and I'll take you back, and I wanted to talk to you about the Dogo Gundu project, which is see where it says Duck Valley Project right there. When I recently traveled down to New Zealand, when I went down to New Zealand, we found out that we were down there for Matariki. Matariki is based upon what we commonly known as the Pleiades, so the Greek mythology of the star formation out there. And I think that's kind of the biggest thing that I wanted to drive home on this one here, is that there is a lot more to this than just what Greek mythology talks about the stars. And so we want you to try and open up and look at different things that are out there, because it's just absolutely mind-blowing when you start to see. When we were down there for Matariki, they were sounding, it's based upon the 7-star formation, or Pleiades, and then a certain time of the year, 2 more stars pop up. And so they gave me this when we get back out of here, I'll show you some of the things that we have out here. Is there any way that we could just take the presentation down and you can just see me? Thank you. So right over here, can you see that? Is it showing up, Lisa?
Looks great.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have all these star formations over here, and so they gave us 9 stars and a little write-up on it, what Matariki means, and so there's 2 other stars that pop up just for a couple days, and it's believed to be their parents as the 7 sisters, and that's the celebration of the new year. As we started looking into it, we started seeing that the Aboriginals of Australia also talk about a creation story, that the 7 original Aboriginal tribes were related to the 7 sisters. You go over to Hawaii, and Hawaii has a Makaliki, I think it is, and I apologize if I said that wrong. They have their 7-star formation too. I just mentioned the Subaru I didn't rep Subaru for. You look at the emblem on there, and you count it, and there's only 6 stars on there. I was like, how is that happening right there? But the 7th star, I've been told, is said to hide behind Jupiter, the planet. So that's how they have the 6-star formation on there. And so then you have the stories. We have a lot of stories from our different tribes in the area of Devil's Tower, and I apologize for not knowing the correct name for Devil's Tower. But that location right there has the Seven Sisters and has a bear chasing up the Seven Sisters that are fleeing from the bear. And then as the bear is trying to get to them, and it's putting in those deep grooves in the mountains there, and just as the bear is about ready to crest over, then they becomes a star formation that we commonly known as Pleiades. So you start to look at all these things and you start to see how they're all tied together. And that's what inspired us to come up with a grant proposal project, which is called Dogo Gundu, which means in Western Shoshone means the heavens above. This is going to be a project that will be we'll have the very first observatory on tribal lands in the United States. And I just recently went to a Night Skies Academy in Santa Fe, and I was really surprised to see that there's only a couple different observatories that are out there that are on federal land. I think there's one in the Great Basin at the Great Basin National Park, and they have the Park to Park, which goes from Timbisha or Death Valley all the way out to the Great Basin National Park, and then up in Glacier, I believe, is the other one. And so we're super excited about this because once this happens, we'll be the very first one on tribal lands. In addition, there's just so very few that are out there. And that entire project was all inspired me by doing the travels of going around and meeting different things out there. And then you see the bear that I have back here. I'm a bear dancer, and so I have we would never harm a bear in our culture, so that was gifted to me. And so these are some of the gifts that have come to me. And I showed you the 7 stars there. The turtle that I have right here, this is from the Hawaiian culture, and this brought in fire to me. And so then we had fire, we had sense of smell from the bear here. Mother Earth provided all these different, you see the knives and the quivers that I make right here. But on this bow right here, I started taking a look at who I am as a person and how it's going to be the driving force of this project of Dogo Gundu, the heavens above. And that's why when you see in here, this is where down in New Zealand, I heard the story of Matariki, and I met the keeper of water down there. Then we have the Hawaiian turtle right here, which represents how it connects all of our cultures together. And then below down here, you see the bear down here that I just talked about and the significance of that bear story. And then you see the 7 stars above it, which is the Seven Sisters or Pleiades that is most commonly known as that star formation. And then on the bottom right here, you see the bighorn sheep. This represents the Great Basin culture for me, and then all the gifts that Mother Earth brings to us. So what I wanted to kind of just kind of bring home on this whole thing is that this entire project was based upon me having no knowledge of hardly stars at all. I'm not a scholar of stars or astronomy, but when this project started coming together, it was basically meeting with the tribe first. They said that they wanted to be on the map for being able to do some sort of eco-friendly tourism without open up the doors to mass tourism. I started hearing and dreaming about all these stories, and it came together, and we put together this grant proposal. And in your also in the link here, we have the link of if anybody wants to read our whole proposal. But we have aligned ourselves with the Nevada Astrology Society. I always stumble on my words, but you know who I'm talking about. They are going to be such a huge advocate for us because they're going to be able to provide technical support for us to set up our observatory. And then we, of course, with the National Park Service, and I had no idea that we were going to be the very first one to have an observatory until I spoke to Gina Pearson and asked for a letter of recommendation for this grant, and she put down in there that this will be the very first one on Native American lands. And so I just really wanted to drive home the idea that there is so much more to our night skies than Greek mythology, and to hear these stories. And now we have an opportunity. My big dream is to have a northern Paiute and Washoe one that is off on the western half of Nevada, and then have another tour that starts down in Timbisha or Death Valley and goes all the way up through New Wave and ends up in the Fort Hall area. So you just think about all these areas and how they have different stories. We all, the big common thing is everybody thinks that we have the same stories, and what I mentioned before, they may be very similar in certain ways, but we all tell our different stories, and that's the most important thing that I wanted to drive home too, is that we are still here. We want, if we're going to tell our stories, let us tell our stories, and that is so vital to make things authentic out there, is to allow us to tell our stories if they want them to be told. Okay, thank you.
If anyone has any questions, we have about a couple of minutes that we could take maybe one or two questions. Are there any questions from the audience?
I have a question. Ben, or Ravis, do you have any Native American books that you can recommend that outline or delineate Native cultural stories about constellations?
And as I mentioned before, I'm just now starting to get into this, and I'm starting to see the different things that are out there. But as far as the Great Basin goes, very few things are written down. These are mostly stories, and so that's what I think is so unique about our project, is that we have a tribe that has stepped up, the Duck Valley Shoshone Paiute tribe, and is offering to tell their stories of that particular area. So most of the things that you see in the Great Basin are just small stories written down. But as I'm getting more and more into this, I'm starting to look at all kinds of YouTube things, and I'm starting to see things, but coming from the Dene to the Kiowa to Eastern Shoshone, that are talking about in their stories the different types of things that you can read and also be able to look at in video. So I apologize, I don't have any recommendations for the Great Basin, but outside I am starting to see a ton of reference material that you can utilize.
Awesome. Thank you.
And also, just to add, we could probably put together a short list of recommended books and send it out with the recording. There's a question here, Ben. Where exactly will the observatory be located?
Okay, so if you're familiar with the shape of Nevada, on the eastern half of the state, the northeastern half, is a town called Elko. If you go straight up from Elko, you'll hit the Idaho border, and on that border right there is the Duck Valley Shoshone Paiute tribe, and it's half in Idaho and it's half in Nevada. And this particular site will be on the Idaho side. It's going to be at one of our campgrounds, and so you'll be able to not only be able to have the experience of being able to fish and the outdoor activities, but also have the experience of the observatory there.
Okay, I think I'm gonna try and introduce Ravis to keep things moving along. I don't think the proposal, the grant has been accepted yet, right? You don't have?
That is correct. Yes, we are.
Okay.
We are just on the point, but I'm telling you, Gina, we
Yeah,
have
we're
a very
we're hopeful.
person, and there's nothing telling me that we're not going to get it.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't even think that way.
Yeah. I'm on the same page. Well, thank you very much, Ben. It's an honor to have you here, and such a great storyteller and bear dancer.
Thank
Okay,
you. I'm going to go
so
ahead and mute myself.
all right. So Ravis is are you ready there, Ravis? And if you have recommended books, you can just throw the names in the chat there too, and I see some popping up. Just want to introduce Ravis Henry. He's coming to us from Canyon de Chelly National Monument, in or maybe from his home office. So Ravis, I've had the pleasure of knowing over the last couple years when I was working on a project there at Canyon de Chelly, and heard him give a talk on about the Navajo perspective of the night sky. Oh, maybe 3 or 4 years ago now, with the Under One Sky, Dark Sky International Conference. So That was my first introduction to Ravis. So thanks, Ravis. Go ahead and take it away.
Well, thank you, Gina, Lisa. Um, Yate anos koshe ya Ravis Henry tashjene. Kia anin shnato mai tashgijne bashichin ado ashe dashche dot tnasin dashnale. Aisin late is sotan nasha kunde. Chille gish dashche dot kwa. Say has I gish ya ho ado kwa anashnish kutaya. Say ni tilken shnado ni ho ka dilene bilashlai. Nshlam. Do kadinle not ani nez de cash edo ari she estando here where hello quick well, good afternoon to each and every one of you. For those of you who are tuning in this afternoon, my name is Ravis Henry. I am of the Navajo tribe belonging to the Towering House clan, born for the Coyote Pass Hamas clan, and my grandpas are Salt People clan and Tangle People clan. And I'm originally from a place called Alamo, New Mexico. That's where my mother is from. That's where my grandparents resided. That's where my umbilical cord is buried. But I was born in Chinle, Arizona. My father's family comes from the beautiful Canyon de Chelly, and I grew up in that area with my father's family majority of my life, and that's where I still call home, and currently have the opportunity to work at home as well at Canyon de Chelly National Monument, where I've been with the National Park Service now for 15 years, and I work entirely with the interpretation program at Canyon de Chelly, which also is now part of the Southern Four Corners groups of parks, which includes Hubble Trading Post, National Historical Site, and Navajo National Monument. So I'm happy to be here this afternoon to be asked to share just a little bit um, about our perspectives pertaining to the Navajo or the Dene people in regards to the Navajo cosmos or the sky and the stars and so forth. So I just wanted to share just a little bit, give you all some introductions to some of our perspectives and our stories. And I wanted to start by first sharing the first Navajo word I shared with all of you, which is Ya'at'eh. And the word Ya'at'eh in Navajo is utilized as a greeting. And for most people, when you ask them what Ya'at'eh means, they're going to simply tell you it means hello. Um, but it actually doesn't mean hello. It actually has a much deeper meaning behind it when we share the word and express Ya'at'eh. We're actually talking about two of our most important beings, spiritual beings, our deities. And the very first part of the word, Ya'at'eh, it's Ya. And when we say Ya and Ya'at'eh, we're talking about everything that's around us going up. We're talking about the air. We're talking about the beings with wings, those that can fly. We're talking about the clouds, the rain, the snow, the thunder, lightning. We're talking about the sun, the moon, the blue sky, and even further into the darkness to the stars and the Milky Way. All of that together collectively is identified in our language as Yatishkir, which is the sky. And we identify the sky as our father by saying Yatishkir Shetkha, and that simply means Father's sky. So that's referenced in the first part of the word Ya'at'eh, which is Ya. The second part of the word Ya'at'eh is At'eh, and At'eh is talking about everything around us going down, everything beneath our feet, everything that's beneath our homes, our buildings. It's the ground, it's the dirt, the rocks, it's the vegetation, the trees, it's the hills, the mountains, the rivers, canyons, the waters, everything that's a part of the wonderful being that we identify as Nahostan, which is the earth. And we identify her as Nosan Shema, which is Mother Earth. So when we say Ya'at'eh in our language, we're actually referencing the sky and the earth. And when we say Ya'at'eh for that moment, it's like Mother Earth and Father Sky are holding hands. And right there between the hands of Mother Earth and Father Sky, everything is perfect. Everything is beautiful, everything is harmonious, everything is balanced, and everything is good. And right there, where all that is good is where life exists. And that's where we are. So when we say Ya'at we're referencing our place in this space. We're understanding that we are between two beings. And when we say Ya'at we're saying that everything that around us is good. Everything that is good with the sky, everything that is good with the earth, it is all good with me. And when we express the word Ya'at we're saying all that is good around me, above me, below me will also be good with you. So that's the first thing that I wanted to share with each of you is just that word, the meaning behind it, Ya'at, which simply can be translated to the English word of good. And that's how we express goodness and greetings to each and every one of you. And it's very fitting because it references the earth and it references the sky, which is part of this little moment that I'm going to be sharing with you. But I just wanted to give a little bit of context for those of you who are unfamiliar with the Navajo people and the Navajo Nation. We are a group of people that are um, original landholders of the areas of the Four Corners region. Anthropologically, there's going to be different stories, but through our oral traditions, we come from these lands and we've emerged into these places. And the Navajo Nation today sits in the Four Corners region in northwest New Mexico, northeast Arizona, and the southeastern tip of Utah. And the Navajo Nation lands itself are about 27,000 square miles, which is roughly the same size as the state of West Virginia. And in that, we have about 110 different communities or chapters. And we have a population of Navajo people around about 400,000 people today. We are considered to be the largest Native American tribe today among the 400 or 570 plus federally recognized tribes in the United States. And we have one of the largest areas that we're still able to reside on and live and occupy the lands. And in this map here, Canyon de Chelly is going to be right smack in the center. And that's where I work. And Canyon de Chelly National Monument is a park unit that is very unique in the national park system because the land itself was never totally withdrawn to be National Park Service lands. So Canyon de Chelly National Monument sits entirely on Indian trust land. So essentially it's still Navajo land. And because of that, there's a unique setup for this particular park in that there's still many families that reside in the canyons, within the canyon walls and on the canyon rims. And the park boundaries were just placed on top of Navajo land, mostly for the protection of the resources. In the earlier days, around the 1930s, the park was established to protect the area from looting and illegal excavations, with many of the archaeological sites that we have in the park. But since the park's establishment, it's been a very unique setup for the people who continue to reside there and for the thousands of visitors who come from around the world to see the beautiful landscapes of Canyon de Chelly. And Canyon de Chelly itself has many, many archaeological sites. Over 3,600 different archaeological sites have been identified, and they're still identifying more as they do more extensive surveys across the monument or across the park boundaries. But we easily say that we have over 5,000 years of continual human occupancy in this particular park area. And we say that because a lot of the other parks, unfortunately, don't have indigenous people still residing in those areas. And that's what makes our park different, that we still have an active living community. So we have the ability or the opportunity to say that we have over 5,000 years of continual human occupancy. And that could actually be extended further back to 10,000 years. But majority of what we have as archaeological evidence can be found going back 5,000 years to several decades from now. And we have many rock art sites. And the rock art sites are one of the things that I think highlight Canyon de Chelly. And we have rock art sites from many different um, tribes and different tribal groups that have come through the canyon, from the Navajo to the Hopi and the Pueblo. Um, and one of the ones I want to focus on specifically is Navajo rock art. And a more unique thing about Canyon de Chelly and the Navajo Nation of the Four Corners region is that the Navajo people have always had a very deep connection to the land and to the sky. And I think that a lot of us realize that, that connection has always been there for Navajo people on the land, but it's not so much talked about on a larger scale in regards to the sky. We have creation stories of the stars and the sun and the moon. They all exist, but there's not a lot of evidence that can be kind of shared or connected to these stories. But at Canyon de Chelly, we have areas across the canyon where there are many alcoves and small caves. And when we start to make our way into these alcoves and caves, and when we look above the ceilings of these alcoves and caves, we start to see rock art that has been depicted. And these are not just ordinary rock art, these are actual specific rock art sites that depict the night sky, and they depict our connection as Navajo people to the night sky and to the darkness. And these Navajo planetariums, as we call them now, several dozen of them in the canyons, have some very well documented constellations of the night sky. And that kind of just proves our point and strengthens our point of how important the night sky has always been for Navajo people. Um, and that kind of sets us aside from other tribal groups who have also left their marks in Canyon de Chelly. The Pueblos, the Hopi, the ancestral Puebloans, a lot of their depictions of the cosmos or the sky is that of the sun, the moon, solstices, and also eclipses, but not so much the stars. And that's where the Navajo took, I guess, um, more observance to the night sky and not so much to the sun, moon, solstices, or eclipses. Um, and I just wanted to bring that, kind of to your attention to let you know that we have proof of how important the night sky is for us as Navajo people. And um, that leads us to our stories of the night sky. And in the essence of time, I'm not going to share the story of the sun and the moon, but they are a very big part of our Navajo oral traditions and oral stories. And when we talk about the world we live in and how it came into existence, we have many different stories of creation, beginning in the world of darkness and migrating through four different worlds, from the dark world to the blue world, the yellow world, and into the white world, or the glittering world that we live in today. And throughout that story of creation, everything has a time and a place of how it became into existence, from the crystals becoming the sun and being held by the sun barrier, and another crystal being created into the moon, and how that is being carried by the moon barrier every day and every night. And it's from those crystals that were created to create the sun and the moon that led to the next story of the night sky, which is the creation of the stars. Utilizing the leftover chips of the crystals that they used to make the sun and the moon, they collected all those chips and saved it for our people. And it was the deities that had a conversation with each other at one point of trying to figure out how they could leave reminders for our people of how to be caretakers of this world, how to live decent lives, how to remind us of our morals and our ethics, and how to go about, our lives throughout the seasons, the ceremonies and the songs. And there was different conversations that had been had by the deities of how this could happen. Some of them said we should leave the marks on the walls of the canyons. Others said we should write them in the water or the sands. But eventually it came down to the decision that they would utilize the crystals and the large canvas of darkness that came every night. So this is where one of our important stories of the coyote and the stars comes into place. And for us as Navajo people, we've always been an oral storytelling society. And for us as Navajo people, majority of our stories are told in the wintertime only. And this is one of those stories that's told in winter times. And this story can be a lot more elaborate and shared if there's more time that could be allowed for us to speak on. But in short, the story of the stars or the creation of the stars takes place with the deities creating specific symbols and constellations, utilizing the crystals and placing them one by one into the sky. And with each symbol or constellation they created, there were teachings. There was a story that was shared that represented that specific symbol, and that was utilized as a teaching opportunity for our people, the five-fingered people here on Earth, to keep as a reminder of specific ceremonies, songs, or how to live our lives. Um, and during that process, there were many deities that sat together around these crystal chips, creating these constellations. And one of those deities who wasn't initially invited was the coyote. And he is the one who actually came and unwelcomed. Um, he made himself welcome into that home, and eventually, in his anger of not being invited to this place, in this sacred place and ceremony of creating the stars, he's the one who reached down and grabbed the buckskin blanket that was housing all of the crystal chips, and he grabbed that blanket and just yanked it up and threw all those chips into the night sky. And that's how the rest of the stars were scattered all across the darkness. And that's what we see today. So from that story, we have what we see every night, which is the beautiful night sky. And before the coyote could destroy before the coyote could scatter all of those constellations or those stars across the night sky, there were some constellations that the deities were able to complete. And these are some of the ones that we still talk about today. And some of the most important ones are that are revolving around the North Star or Polaris. And there's three constellations here that are always together and can be seen year round from the Northern Hemisphere. And that's one, the Polaris, which is the center of the night sky from our perspective, and it's considered to be the fireplace. Naho Konspakon is what we call it as. And on opposite sides of this fireplace are two constellations, Ursa Major and um, Ursa Major and I forgot the female one, but it's the W in the
Cassiopeia.
sky. There you go, Cassiopeia. Thank you. So
Mhm.
these two constellations represent the male and female of our homes. So Ursa Major, the Big Dipper, is Naho Konspaka'i, and he symbolizes the um, the men folks in our society, in our homes. He represents fatherhood. He represents the teachings that separate us as men from the women. And Cassiopeia, which is Naho Konspa'ari, represents all of our mothers, the females, the life giver. And these two are never together, which also reminds us that there are always things that are going to separate us from the men and the women. There are some things that women can do that men can't, and vice versa. But they're always together because it takes a mother and a father to bring life into this world. And it takes a mother and a father to raise children. And that's why these three constellations are always together around the fireplace. So these are three important constellations. And we have many, many others, but in the essence of time, I just want to point out the names of a few. One that a lot of people are familiar with as Orion to us is Alta, which is the first slender one. And he represents warriorship and the ability to fight and to take care of ourselves physically, mentally, emotionally. And then we have Atsetso, which is part of the constellation of I always forget the correct pronunciation, but I think it's Scorpius. Um, and this
Scorpius.
constellation of Atsetso is a reminder of our elders and the wisdom that all of them have with the many years of life that they have had on this earth. Um, but one that I want to talk about is also one that was brought up with Ben's conversation earlier, and that's the constellation in our language of Dilyaha, which is Pleiades. And Dilyaha is a very important constellation. There's a unique story behind it and its name, but what I would like to share is that this is one of the most important constellations to Navajo people, as it's a signal of the seasonal changes for our people. This is a constellation that we watch throughout the year to tell us what season we are in and when it's appropriate to do certain activities, such as practicing our winter ceremonies and when do we start our summer ceremonies. This constellation also tells us when it is time to plant and put our seeds into the earth. There's a certain time when this constellation sort of disappears from our view shed for about 5 or 6 weeks, and that's going to be in the springtime. And in Canyon de Chelly, it's around late April into the beginning of June. And when this constellation disappears, that's when we have our planting season for our people. This is when we put seeds into the earth. And this is why it's an important constellation. Um, and there's a lot more I could share, but I feel like we're running out of time and I want to leave some time for questions. So I want to leave one last thing with all of you in regards to our observations and connection to the night sky, leading from the observance of Dilyahef. When we look at the night sky from different times of the year, we also notice that these constellations appear in certain parts of the sky at certain times of the night throughout the year. And one of those constellations is going back to Ursa Major, which is Nahokospaka'i. When you watch that constellation throughout the year, say, for example, if you choose one day in each of the seasons, winter, spring, summer, and fall, at the same time of the night, and you go out and you see that constellation, it's going to be in 4 different parts of the sky. And as you watch that constellation at that time in those 4 different seasons, it starts to make a symbol that many people are familiar with. And for us, it's a symbol that is very different from what mainstream society has come to see that symbol as today. But for us, this symbol is called Tenayo Ete, which is the twirling log, which is the whirling log symbol. And it's a symbol of life. It's a symbol of seasonal changes and the progression of moving forward. It's talking about how everything begins with one creator and grows outward in a clockwise manner for things that are good. And then it can be reversed in the opposite direction to get rid of sickness and illness and negative energy. And then it's switched back to the other direction to continue for the good, positive energy. And it's utilized in our ceremonies, and it's been a part of our people for thousands of years, not just for the Navajo people, but for many, many different people around the world for thousands of years. It's a symbol that I feel has been misunderstood, forced to be misunderstood today, but it's something that is very prominent and can be seen in Canyon de Chelly. And for us, is also tied to the night sky and the connections of seasonal changes. But there's a lot that could be shared, and I want to just end on that note and allow for some time for reflection and questions for the time that is remaining. So with that said, Ahyeha and Sago for allowing me the opportunity to just share a few things, to point out a few things for topics of discussions. And if any of you have further discussions or would like to hear more, see more, you're always welcome to reach out, and I'd be happy to try to elaborate or spend some more time talking and sharing a little bit about our perspectives as Navajo people. With that, I'll hand it back over to Lisa.
Okay. Ravis, thank you.
Regina,
and Gina. Yeah, we are close to our end, but I want to first announce before we go into questions and answers, I was given permission by our speakers to continue the discussion past the hour. So for those of you who can stay on, we welcome you to stay on. Such wonderful stories, and thank you so much, Ben, Ravis, for these lovely presentations. Gina, I'm going to pass it off to you.
Okay. Thanks, Ravis. That was awesome. Could listen to you for another hour. So yeah, there was a question initially about from an individual from Mexico. Let's see, where'd it go? From Irving Guevara. He says, I'm working with my community to share stories. I'm from Mexico and have learned new stories from my family. How can we gracefully ask to hear stories, or how can we begin to talk to tribal leaders? Can you suggest some things to do? I guess either one of you can answer, but maybe Ravis, you can start.
Sorry, can you repeat the question again? I got carried away reading some of the comments.
Oh, yeah, there's just this individual from Mexico. He's been sharing stories from his family stories, and he wants to know how he can gracefully ask to hear stories, or how he can begin to talk to tribal leaders. If you have any suggestions.
Yeah, it's going to be, I guess, challenging depending on your tribal groups that you're working with. I can't speak for any of the tribes in your particular area, but as Navajo people, it's always important to it is always important to try to make a relationship first, and get to know the group of people. Don't go in trying to just get your questions answered right away, but go in to build a relationship. Get to know each other first, and let them know where you're coming from and what you intend to do. There's been a lot of folks who have come to Indigenous people with the intention of wanting to know and hear these stories, but then they take it and do other things that they probably shouldn't be doing, publishing them or so forth. And that's why it's important to build relationships, to build trust before you start asking for stories. And when you get them, it's important to also get the permission on how you can save it or share it or utilize it directly from those people as well.
Very good. I think that kind of leads into this question from Richard. Is it Tenney?
Gina, can I answer another one part of that too?
Yeah. Go for it.
Okay. What I wanted to say is, first of all, I mean, so well put on building trust, and I think that is truly where everything begins right there. I think of, I mean, and every one of our tribes, we can think of different stories where people have come in and tried to they get some sort of knowledge, and then they try to tell the story in their perspective and not allowing us to teach to tell it in our way. The other thing that was just mentioned too is that that trust is so vitally important to be able to just be able to walk into a tribal council, that they know who you are, they know that you're not trying to you know to take things for your benefit. One of the things that I think that really helps us out with Nevada's Indian Territory is we always walk in, we know they know who we are, but at the same time, we never ask for money. We always say, this is what we'd like to do. We'll help you provide. If you want to proceed forward, we will find you a way. Which is a good example is the Stogo Gundu. This was first, the seed was first planted by the Duck Shoshone Paiute tribe, and then we helped to develop the grant based upon their request. So that's why it's so important, and it's just. And then the other thing is consultation. To everybody says, oh yeah, we want you to review are we telling the right story? Are we using the right language right there? That all takes time from our TIPO or our different cultural resource advisors, and you need to look at it in a different way as to when you're asking or you're going into consultation and asking for a review, provide that tribe with money to pay them for their time to review it, and I think you'll have a lot more success than just always inundating tribes with different things. And I think that's another important thing too. And the last thing I wanted to leave with is, as you know, Gina, with the American Indian Alaska Native Tourism Association, they just put together a on how to work with tribes. It's basically a toolkit, and so you can go into their website and download these different. They worked with many tribes across the United States to develop a toolkit on how to work with tribes. And they also just recently partnered with Leave No Trace to come up with some more on how to tell stories and how to be inclusive of different Native tribes out there. And it also at the same time allows Native tribes to use an approach to correctly identify who they are for cultural awareness and cultural identity. And it's just done in a very respectful way. So that's on IANTA's website or the American Indian Alaska Native Tourism Association for that toolkit. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. Very well said. Building that relationship takes time. I think that's the key thing that Western folks have a difficulty with. Was there any other questions? There was a question here
you were
about
starting to
rock art. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you were starting to ask me about thing that I posted, and I'm in the spirit of what was just said. I want to clarify and make sure that it's understood that Dr. Lundwall is very respectful of Native communities and would not use any of this information to exploit. He's simply a scientific researcher who has done some quite a bit of extensive research with Fremont pictographs, and but not just the rock art, or however the appropriate term is to use there, but has found a lot of evidence to show a strong connection between what's been depicted and how these sites are oriented, showing a clear evidence that these native cultures had an extensive knowledge of the night sky and of the solstices and the geometries of all of this stuff. And it's really interesting, really fascinating things that he has discovered and learned about this. And I think he's always trying to expand that knowledge. And I guess my question was pointed more towards Ravis or Ravis, however you pronounce your name. Sorry, I didn't catch that. But if you would be willing to share the location of some of those sites with him that show the images that you showed with the different constellation patterns, I'm sure that he would be really, really interested in seeing what those are and how that ties in with the Fremont sites that he's studied already, if you were willing to do that.
I am not willing to do that.
You're
But
not
if he
willing
is-
to do that? Okay.
Correct. But if he is interested in learning more about it, he's always welcome to reach out to our archaeology team at Canyon de Chelly National Monument.
Okay.
And he'll also have to reach out to the Tribal Historic Preservation Office of the Navajo Nation. So he'd have to go through those two and get approval first
Okay.
before he could even continue to move
This is a
forward.
dumb question. How do you spell Canyon du Chelly?
Canyon, Canyon, DE
Yeah.
or D and Shay, Chelly.
E-E, Chelly. Thank you.
Okay. Were there any other
I
questions
actually have
here?
a comment for Richard
Yeah,
too.
go ahead.
as I know you're aware that we have just numerous cultural sites with petroglyphs throughout the Great Basin. And one of the things that we're always trying to do is, I mean, you travel around, and most of them are all, Nevada is probably 85% public land. So most of these site areas are not on tribal lands. And so we're very unfortunate in that aspect because we get a lot of damage to our petroglyphs out there. And but they're also easily accessible for the public to go out there. And one of the things that we just recently worked with the Washoe tribe when we produced a video and we had itineraries going around is that there was a couple different sites that we had on there that had petroglyphs and also grinding stones, and the tribe, just as was mentioned, did not want us to make sure that we put that out there. And it's not to be offensive at all, Richard. It's one of those things is that we guard these areas as very sacred areas, and it's for us to know, and it's not for us to have to explain it to anybody. It's one of those things that's just out of respect. And that's basically what I wanted to get at is that you in Nevada, and I imagine all the way over there in Utah, because I've been to numerous of those sites too, you have easy access through the public. And Canyon de Chelly is going to be very, very guarded because it's all on tribal lands in that area there. So
Absolutely understood.
yeah, whole different situation.
Yeah, and it's heartbreaking anytime you see people doing vandalism at those sites. It's just, it should be a serious federal offense
Yes.
if it isn't already.
Yes.
It is. It's just a matter of catching them, proving it.
Gina?
What are current thoughts? Do you want me to wrap it up?
Oh, no, I wanted to say there's a question. Speaking of some of the slides and the artwork that was shared today.
Oh,
One,
yeah.
Bonnie asked, Ravis, your paintings were so beautiful. Did you paint those? Can you tell us the
I did,
story of
yeah,
those
I did
paintings?
not. So I'm assuming you're referring to the constellation paintings. Those are actually done by Melvin Bainbridge, who worked with Nancy Maryboy and David Begay in utilizing those images for that book that was shared, sharing the skies, Navajo astronomy. So that's where those images are coming from. I did not create them. I'm not that artistic with painting. Maybe I'll make some in silver soon and you'll see those, but I don't have anything in any of those personal works that I'm utilizing.
Oh, thanks for sharing. And I wanted to say thank you to everyone who did share links to the works, the work of various writings. I can't wait to look into it. Ravis, do you have a website for your silversmith work? Is that a open business? Okay. Well,
Yeah, I don't have no website, no.
okay.
Gina, Lisa, if I could may say something also.
Please.
Yes, go for it.
What I wanted to say too is that I totally lost my train of thought. What I was thinking about. You mentioned the website out there, so let me just pause for a second.
Silversmithing.
Yeah. Oh no, I know what it was. Okay, so one of the things that we just recently worked with is, and this goes out to a lot of the different federal agencies that may be on this this webinar, along with some state agencies that represent different land bases out there, is that we just worked with the Bureau of Land Management, the Great Basin Artists, the American Indian Alaska Native Tourism Association, Travel Nevada, and what we did is we did an art contest. And so I just wanted to mention that to everybody too, is that as you're developing different cultural itineraries, that the land that you represent may have different of these different areas, or you want to have a different perspective out there, is to consider utilizing our artists out there. And this was a great example of how beautiful some are, but it always has a story that's tied around it. And that's what we just did the California Trail. And the artist who came from Pyramid Lake, she talks about the story of traveling across and how you see different types of terrain features, and you're looking at through one of our burden baskets, and you're seeing these different travel route that the pioneers were taking across the California Trail. So what I wanted to just give an example is that find a way to utilize our artists out there, because that was a great example. Beautiful picture, but it had a story behind it, and that's what makes it so authentic and meaningful.
Thanks for sharing that, Ben. Is that up and available? Is that or is it completed?
It is completed. They just did the
Oh,
award
okay.
at the American Indian Alaska Native Tourism Association
Oh, awesome.
in Louisiana, and they were going to have a local one at the Great Basin. It's actually the Nevada Museum of Art, which is in Reno, Nevada, and we're going to have the artists there along with the entire community to celebrate this honoring of our artists that just did this painting.
Is it going to be at the California Trail Interpretive Center, or where's it going
No,
to
no.
eventually reside?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, it'll be there, but it'll be spread out along it. The whole route there is
Oh, okay. Awesome. That's
interpretive
great.
design.
That
Yeah,
is so cool.
yeah, it's just really
Um,
neat. And they
yeah,
just
I'll have to find I'm sure that um, Karin has a link to that on the BLM website or
yes,
something. I don't
yeah,
know. Okay,
yes.
I'll
And
find that.
I'll try
And
and send you the link too,
okay, okay, awesome.
along with the announcement for the unveiling of it, which will be here coming up. I think it's on the 19th of December.
Okay, awesome. Okay, thanks for putting those links in there, Lisa, for Ienta and Kane DeShay. So, Lisa, I don't know if there's any more questions.
There's one more that might be to be on the tail of this discussion we just had. Dolly Sanchez wrote in, I believe you work near Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument, and she asked if there were any recommendations on making connections in the Page, Arizona, Big Water, Utah area. She works for Grand Staircase and would be very interested in making connections so she can emphasize the cultural areas in that area. Maybe Ravis, is that something you could address?
I think it would be important to first start with the associated tribes to Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument. And depending on what is indicated on your associated tribal groups, you would have to work directly with those tribal partners to find out who would be the ones to work with in building up and strengthening your cultural knowledge of those specific areas. Um, that might take some time and might take some research, but that's where I would start. You can always befriend a lot of indigenous people who might have already roots to that area, but when you're talking about the monument scale, it's important to always go through your affiliated tribes and the appropriate routes of travel consultation, collaboration.
Yeah, and Dolly, I was
Go
just going to say that the archaeologists for the monument would know who those affiliated tribes are, and then yeah, just building that relationship and starting the conversations. I think one of the things that I'd like to say before we wrap up is, you know, Ben said it, and I'll say it again, but it's the native voices that we want to hear from. When we that aren't native talk about their stories, it's not coming from the origin. We're like interpreting it to say, from it's not their perspective. And so I think that's what, in Park Service, the BLM, other agencies, we're trying to do a better job of that and work on projects where we can, work with the tribes from the very beginning. and say, what is the story that you want to tell, and have it be from their voice, not someone else telling their story. And I know that that's one of the big things that IENTA is all about too. So.
Thank you. That's definitely what I'm very interested in, is having connections and maybe being partnerships, I guess, where,
Mm-hmm.
to be honest, you know, Ravis talking about their, their traditions and the sky and the earth. And there's also, you can feel that there's a connection when he's presenting it. And so that's really interesting, is like having partnerships so that, you know, we can sponsor or and I'm sorry I was kicked off a little while ago, but yeah, this is just something I'd really like to have more like involvement, so that, you know, I in a visitor center, but maybe having evening things or something like that.
Yeah, evening program with a indigenous tribal person telling their story. Yeah, it'll take some time, but it can happen. It's, you know, we have examples in other places, other protected areas that are national monuments or national parks. So, so yeah, go for it.
Thanks.
Dolly, Yosemite is a good example of one that utilizes different indigenous interpretation of local members in the what they call the village in the Valley of Yosemite.
Mm-hmm.
So that might be something to take a look at.
Okay, we'll do.
Yes.
Yeah, Dolly, I'll write your name down and I can send you some info too for other areas, other parks that have strong outreach and interpretive programming with their associated tribes. And you can see how they went about it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Lisa, I don't know if you want to wrap it up.
I think we can come to an end here. This has been wonderful. Thank you all for staying on just a little bit longer so we can continue these conversations and kind of complete our thoughts. Such wonderful stories, beautiful imagery. Thank you. We enjoy every minute we have an opportunity to hear from our Indigenous friends. So thank you so much. We are thrilled that we can partner together and learn from each other, work together. I think it helps everyone in the effort of protecting our dark night skies. So there's so many avenues that bring us to an appreciation. So thank you for sharing your perspectives, Ben, Rupert, and Ravis Henry. It's been lovely to meet with you today. Thank you to Gina for all the work that you've done for the Dark Sky Cooperatives and helping me today. I really appreciated your insights today. Thank you to our audience for your participation, your questions, and just staying with us. It's been lovely. So please follow along in our future quarterly connections. I will be dropping into the chat here stay tuned to our website. And please
and then
also,
the survey, right?
Here is our survey. I'm going to drop that in one more time so that we can hear from you as far as ideas. We have some ideas for next year, and I'd love to have, oh, I keep having trouble here. I'd like to, if you have suggestions on what you'd like to hear from, please let me know, because we are discussing that now. I have a few speakers TBD right now, but typically the first week of the month, quarterly connections. So plan to see us again in March and let us know how we did today. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Happy
Thanks, Ben
holidays. Take care,
and
everyone.
Ravis. Bye.
That's it.
Thank you.